We used to love Pixar movies, but now we care about Dreamworks more.
Never stop fighting for this life.
It used to be the other way round till the execs at Dreamworks dethroned Pixar.
Get my lawyer.
It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen with one movie. They used 5 different strategies which ranged from writing characters differently to using completely different tech. Number 2 will have you clapping for Dreamworks, but number 5 will make you believe they're playing dirty. Stick around to find out everything. Dreamworks wouldn't even exist if this guy had never left Disney. Jeffrey Katzenberg felt he was due for a big break with his work at Disney. He had a hand in several classics including The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, and several other Disney hits. But when Michael Eisner made himself CEO and didn't let Katzenberg sit amongst the high ranks at Disney, he lost it. He wanted out, and when he did, he teamed up with Steven Spielberg and musical genius David Geffen. That's how Dreamworks was born. By the time they released their first feature animation, Ants, Pixar already had a massive catalog. But when Shrek 2 came out, it put Dreamworks neck and neck with Pixar in terms of the highest grossing animated movies. Pixar may have retaken that spot with the Toy Story sequels and Inside Out 2, but Dreamworks has made more movies, more money, and more cultural impact. Come on. Over 50 featured films when Pixar barely has more than 30? It's hard to imagine that there was a time when Dreamworks was Pixar's little brother, but these 5 strategies changed that. The first thing Dreamworks did was stop focusing on kids. They decided that if they were going to make animated movies, it had to be something that parents could also watch and get a few laughs. They focused on the family, not just kids, but their older siblings as well. I mean, when you think about Toy Story, no teenager fixated on video games would give a scrap about it. And if a grown adult is turning it on, it's obvious they're just doing that because they have kids to babysit. The plot is literally sentient toys trying to get back to their rightful owner, and Pixar never really tried to go above and beyond this. Cars is just an animated version of Hot Wheels with vehicles that can talk. This was quite ahead of its time, but it wasn't going to appeal to an audience outside of 10-year-old boys. Pixar knew this, so they started to shake things up a bit. The Incredibles was the first real Pixar movie that felt like teenagers and young adults could watch. It was very successful, and they managed to hop on the animated superhero family train before anyone could. But after that, they still stayed in their lane with movies directed at kids. Dreamworks knew that if they wanted to be better, they couldn't repeat Pixar's mistakes. They had to do something that made their rivals look weak. Dreamworks, on the other hand, gave us Shrek. It's one of their most successful movie series for a reason. It's a parody of many popular fairy tales, and it has a lot of humor and magical elements. But while all of that is going on, there are parts that only grown-ups would understand.
Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
An ogre trying to find love while battling evil entitled brats? If it were a live action, it definitely would be PG rated. I mean, there were jokes like this littered throughout the movie.
That's no mine.
But the strong emotional themes and mature message meant kids could watch it again as adults and still get a new perspective. A perspective that adults understood on their first watch. Good luck trying to use Toy Story to explain the birds and the bees to kids. But this mature storyline woven into a children's movie is something you can see in other Dreamworks movies. We saw incels' behavior and moral fatigue in Megamind.
Despite all my powers, each and every citizen of Metro had something I didn't. Choice.
And How to Train Your Dragon was a coming-of-age film about rebelling against tradition and the status quo.
I've been to 2 weddings. I crashed both, but none as high profile as this one.
I could go on and on. When you make a movie where all members of a family can relate to and enjoy, you're going to be the first choice pick for a family movie night. But there are still 4 more strategies we're yet to talk about, and the second is just as effective as the first. And Dreamworks' obsession with bending the rules with their characters. Let's have a look at Shrek real quickly again. In the first movie, it's clear as day that Lord Farquaad is the main villain.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice
I am willing to make.
But by Shrek 2, we have this smoking hottie as the guy trying to ruin Happily Ever After.
I shall rend his head from his shoulders. I will smite him where he stands.
If I didn't know better, I would say that Prince Charming was modeled after Chris Hemsworth playing Thor without a beard. Mind you, Chris hardly ever plays the villain in the movie he's in, but here's a 3D doppelganger being the bad guy. And not to mention, the fairy godmother is also an evil character.
Oh, yes, you will. If you remember, I helped you with your happily ever after.
Yup, the fairy tale character that's always there to save helpless little princesses is out here blackmailing royal families. And why does the wolf look as innocent as a grandmother? The writers at Dreamworks must have really had fun tweaking traditionally good characters, because this is supposed to be a mess, but it somehow works. Normally, brightly colored and attractive characters are the good guys, but not in this studio. Even in Megamind, the guy who ends up saving the day wears black leather and a cape named after the world's deadliest snake.
Bring out the Black Mamba.
Ladies and gentlemen, Metro City's hero. Oh, and did I mention that the guy who got a glow up is more evil than the guy who had been evil his whole life?
Titan has freed us.
Oh, I wouldn't say free.
Dreamworks really just sees normal as boring at this point. That's why they make characters we love into selfish, arrogant jerks, while scary, ugly dudes get a noble cause to chase. Compare that to Pixar and Mickey Mouse sponsored studios, which really like to keep things by the book. I mean, when you're meant for kids and barely anyone else, it's hard to expect much. And Pixar plays it safe often. Their villains look like kindergarten toys next to them. Quite literally. Dreamworks' edge over Pixar also lies in how they write and portray their villains. Who's the scariest Pixar villain you can think of? Maybe Syndrome or Randall? But even then, they feel more like hurdles than true threats. It took you a minute to think, didn't it? Well, there's a reason for that. These are what your options look like. If you didn't watch the movie, you can't even tell that these are the supposed big bad guys in their respective movies. Pixar has become addicted to the twist villain trope, where the antagonist is just a friendly looking mentor until the final 15 minutes. Hopper actually looks good because he's a literal warlord with a cold, calculating design. They made Sid emo, which was doing too much, and how am I supposed to believe this guy has a bad bone in their body? He's just a kid with a toolbox and a lack of supervision. Half of the time, these guys are just being big jerks or corporate executives whose only real crime is being greedy. Pixar should really take a page or two from Dreamworks when it comes to writing and designing villains. I mean, look at this roster. It's a masterclass in silhouette theory. You can tell these guys are dangerous just by their shadows. Who didn't get scared the first time Tai Lung appeared on their screens? The way he escaped Chorgom prison by using a single fallen feather to pick his locks established his threat level before he even landed a punch. We actually thought that Po was going to see an early grave.
Shifu taught you well, but he didn't teach you everything.
Or what about Drago Bloodvest, a Viking with dreads? And the scars on his face make his scorn even more menacing. He's a man who conquered his own fear by enslaving the very things everyone else was afraid of.
You belong to me now.
This is how you design your villains, and when it comes to writing them, Jeffrey Katzenberg most likely told them at the studio not to hold back on the psychological trauma. It's canon that Lord Shen committed genocide to defy a prophecy.
I took away your parents. I scarred you for life.
And they only made the whole super weapon storyline because it represented the death of tradition at the hands of industrial cruelty. Stoic's death only makes you hate Drago more, and that's part of a villain's job description. They are supposed to make us feel scared and really angry at them. And don't even get me started on Death from the Last Wish, literally a physical manifestation of Puss's mortality, who spends the whole movie whistling a haunting leitmotif while he stalks his prey. The stakes of a movie are only as high as the villain's ability to do evil. And when the most evil thing a villain can do is taunt the hero and behave like a loser, you really can't take them seriously. But you know what else you can't take seriously? How Pixar handles action scenes. Because Pixar views animation through a lens of emotional realism, they make movies for kids and families, which limits the amount of action you have in them. But the few times they do get to have action or fight sequences, they decide to be too safe and grounded with things. Take both Incredibles movies, for example. This is a frickin' superhero movie, for goodness sake. There can be superhero landings, aura farming, capes, and swimming in the air, but we never really get that many iconic action scenes that prioritize the rule of cool over the plot beats. Perhaps Dash running on water counts, which was a technical flex back in 2004, but it's essentially just a linear chase scene. And that's really bad because the most iconic thing to come out of that movie is the meme. A frickin' meme of an annoyed bystander or Frozone looking for his supersuit is the best thing to come out of an animated superhero movie? When the most shared clips are dialogue exchanges rather than high-octane brawls, you know there's a lot of action missing. What is Pixar really doing? At least Cars had that Piston Cup drift scene and the moment where he did a flip over another race car. But compared to Dreamworks' track record, which is built on high-stakes spectacle and fluid choreography, this is light work. The prison scene in Kung Fu Panda is considered one of the greatest displays of power scaling and environmental storytelling ever put to film. I mean, Tai Lung literally took out an army of 1,000 rhino guards with a single loose floor tile. The fight against the Furious Five? We don't praise Mark Osborne and John Stevenson enough for their work on the kinetic flow of this film.
Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary.
In the sequel, directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson, they managed to make Poe's killing blow on Shen tie into his quest for inner peace using a liquid animation style that completely redefined how we visualize combat. Making a movie on Kung Fu gives a lot of creative freedom, but are we going to pretend as if How to Train Your Dragon doesn't exist? To get those dragon flight sequences right, the team actually consulted legendary cinematographer Roger Deakins to mimic real-world camera physics. We were seeing flight patterns and moves that we don't even see fighter jets pull off, creating a sense of verticality that Pixar hasn't really touched. And when you have well-designed animated characters and you still make them do cool things, you're definitely going to have people lining up for movie tickets like this, pushing these franchises toward that billion-dollar box office status. But that's still only the fourth way Dreamworks has been trying to put Pixar out of business. But the final nail in the coffin would be the bedrock of the industry itself, the animation style. For decades, the animation arms race was defined by one metric: hyper-realism. We wanted to see every individual hair on Sully's back and every microscopic pore on a character's face. Pixar was the undisputed king of this, refining their RenderMan software until they could basically simulate physics better than reality itself. But then 2022 happened, and we got a front row seat to why perfect isn't always better. Pixar's Lightyear is, technically speaking, a miracle of engineering. The physically based is flawless. The way light hits the metallic scuffs on Buzz's suit, incredible. The subsurface scattering on the skin, top tier. But for a movie nerd, it felt sterile. By chasing total immersion through realism, Pixar accidentally tripped into a version of the uncanny valley. When everything looks like a high-end sci-fi live-action flick, you lose that animated spark. Fans were left unsatisfied because the visuals didn't feel like the Buzz we grew up with. It was too correct to be fun. It lacked a distinct visual soul. While Pixar was busy counting dust motes, Dreamworks looked at what Sony did with Spider-Verse and said, "Hold my milk." With Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, they didn't just update the character, they nuked the entire Shrek era aesthetic. They moved away from the plasticky 3D look of the early 2000s and embraced a 2.5D painterly style. What actually is 2.5D? In this context, it's the art of projecting 3D character models into 2D inspired environments. Instead of everything being perfectly smooth, they used hand-painted textures and stepped frame rates. In the high-octane fight scenes, like the opening giant battle or the showdown with Death, the animators dropped the frame rate from the standard 24 frames per second to on 2s or on 3s. This creates a choppy, kinetic energy that feels like a comic book coming to life. They stopped worrying about correct physics and started focusing on impact. If Puss needs to look terrified, they'll stretch his pupils into weird, jagged shapes that shouldn't exist in 3D space, but look amazing in a storybook. And for a character that's literally a fairy tale being, this would make perfect sense. Dreamworks realized that animation is a medium of possibility, not just a simulation. By using 2.5D, they made The Last Wish look like a moving oil painting. The vibrant colors and sketchy line work didn't just look cool, they served the story. When the wolf appears, the background bleeds into red and the lines get sharper, heightening the horror in a way that realistic lighting never could. Pixar gave us a world that looked like we could touch it. Dreamworks gave us a world that looked like we could dream it. From character design to animation method, Dreamworks used 5 different strategies and methods to push Pixar down to second place. From the first Shrek movie to the second Puss in Boots movie, it's pretty ironic how one of Disney's employees ended up topping one of their biggest studios in just
We're here
over
in Emeryville,
a decade.
California.
It's almost poetic, if you will. The only issue is that Pixar knows about this reality and they are fighting to reclaim the top spot. And in the midst of all this, they're not the only studio that Dreamworks needs to worry about. Illumination's work on Despicable Me has put them on the map. Warner Brothers made a Lego Batman movie that gets talked about as much as Christopher Nolan's work, and not to mention Sony. They just made the animal version of Space Jam, and they are about to complete the Spider-Man trilogy, which already has 2 movies that have gone on to shatter several records. These studios are at each other's necks, and at this rate, Pixar might slip to third if somebody else manages to outdo Dreamworks. But for now, the top spot belongs to them. The only question is, for how long? Now you know why and how Dreamworks snatched Pixar's chain. Do you think Pixar is going to get their lick back, or is Dreamworks just too good? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. And you can check out some of our other videos. Heck, in one, we pitched Sony villains up against Dreamworks to see who did bad guys better, and so many more, so check them out now.